Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dawn Campbell, and firstly, apologise. My webinar, I was just saying, my video's got a life of its own. It keeps turning itself on and off, so I hope it's not too distracting for you. I'm today visited, albeit virtually, by Adam Shaw, and we've got some interesting research to share with you today. So I've just hit the record button. If everybody can mute themselves, I can see we've got callers from all around the world, just to improve the quality of the recording for all those lovely listeners who wanted to make it but couldn't. They can listen to Adam's dulcet tones at a later stage with minimum background noise. So Adam, you and I got talking because we both have a passion for walking, and we're also authors and we're also coaches. So to me it was a no-brainer. I had to get you in front of our members and share your really interesting discovery about walking and coaching. I think I've kind of discovered this for myself because I take clients out walking as well, but I'm going to leave you to share your research and discovery with our callers. So over to you then, please, Adam.
Well, thanks, Dawn. Very happy to be on here and very happy to share this journey. For everybody else out there, a very brief introduction. I was a nurse for best part of 13 years working at the front line of the NHS, and I became a whistleblower. So I jumped before I was pushed, and then I was left in a world of I don't know what happens next. And that's really where this journey started. I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know what profession I wanted to be in. I sort of know I wanted to run a business, but really I didn't know anything. I was at a point in my life where there wasn't just a crossroads. It was like 30 different potential paths I could have gone down from that point. And I was invited. My aunt lives in Zakynthos, and she lives in a lovely little house on one of the mountains walking down towards the bay. So she wanted me to go over there and walk her dogs for her for a few weeks. So I thought, well, this sounds like a perfect opportunity to go there, maybe find out what I'm all about, get some sort of epiphany or discovery of what my life was all about. I just didn't know what I wanted or who I was at the time. So I ended up in Zakynthos with two of my friends. And each day we'd wake up and we'd see this lovely blue bay down in front of us. We think, why don't we walk down the mountain and we can reflect on our lives? So this wasn't a workshop or anything. This was just me and two friends walking down the mountain every day, trying to really piece our lives back together. And we were all in a similar spot. We all wanted change. We didn't know how that was going to unfold for us. And so we ended up in this, what was effectively this house on the mountain. And each day we were walking down the mountain. Now, there were probably about 100 different routes that we could have gone down, but it really was whatever mood we were in. And as we were walking down the mountain, we'd done it a few days, and I started noticing something, that I was asking my friends about their lives, and whenever they got stuck in their head or that the answer got difficult, that somehow they were walking us, leading us to like dead ends or impassable terrains. And at first I thought, oh, that's quite coincidental. And after about the third day, it happened so many times that I started thinking, well, hang on, maybe there's something in this. So I started introducing a question, and this is the golden question for anyone out there walking and coaching. So when people talk about their issues when they're sat down, it's very easy for them to put all of the blame onto someone else, to point the finger, to say, well, they did this, so that caused me. They did X, that caused me Y. And part of the skill of a coach is getting people to take accountability of their own actions. And what I was finding is that when we hit a very tough part during the coaching process, or people are talking about dead ends or not being able to see any good options, they'd inadvertently lead us to these dead end places. So I started introducing the question, have you noticed what we're talking about and where you have led us to. And what I found was that question sort of put people in a bit of a meltdown, because it's one thing talking through a problem. It's another thing owning the fact that you just led us to a dead end whilst talking about a question where you had no response, or you didn't have a solution or an answer. And the more I tuned into this, the more I realized that people were subconsciously leading us to paths that reflected their state of mind. So this was great in Zakynthos, and I thought, well, do you know what? Maybe it's just Zakynthos. Maybe this isn't replicable. Maybe we can't do it back home. So I went back to England, and this was my new passion. I mean, the only thing I didn't do was get any money for it. I was so happy to have discovered this thing that it actually cost me a fortune running workshops, running retreats, just to work out whether this was real or whether it was just luck, or whether it was a one-off. So I booked a retreat in Glastonbury. I invited a lot of friends down there, and we really went for it. We really studied this process. And what I found, here's a couple of examples. I used to run workshops locally and put people in groups of 3. I'd send them out walking. One person would be leading the walk and answering the questions. Another person would be asking the questions, and a third person would just be walking behind the 2, observing them. So for anyone watching these groups of 3 people as a neutral, seeing some person walking behind saying nothing, it feels almost like having a stalker in your walking conversation. But I was sending people out in groups, and they were getting these big breakthroughs. So for example, one woman turned up to my workshop, and her whole process was talking to me how she was stuck, how her son still lived at home, he wasn't contributing, her husband did nothing to help her with her business, and that she was stuck and it was all their fault. Now, as we were talking about this, she'd taken me off the main path. I'm not sure whether she was aware that she'd done it. And she had marched us into the middle of the muddiest field that she could find. And it wasn't as though she was looking for it. We just found ourselves in the middle of it. So after letting her talk about being stuck for the best part of 25 minutes, I stopped her in the middle of the field and I said, stop. I said, now I want you to look around and I want you to see where we've come and where we could have gone and what we're talking about. You know, and more importantly, where you have led us. And this question, combined with the real life situation of 2 of us standing in the middle of a muddy field that she led us to, I found that this question was getting people to take massive, it's like the penny drops moment. That's the moment where people realize that, you know, it's not just other people affecting this. I've led us here. These are my decisions. I have chosen to lead me to the stuck place. And once we get that acknowledgement, when people hit that wall of taking full accountability of what they're doing, then you can say, well, how do we get out of this? What's the solution? How do you change your world and decision-making process so that you can move forward, regardless what anyone else thinks? There was another woman talking to me that she was living in a shared accommodation, and she was upset because she felt people had been going in her room and helping themselves to her things when she hadn't been there without her permission. And as we explored this process, she led me into somebody's garden. And as she was giving off about people violating her space and her territory, she led us into somebody's back garden. And that's when I was able to say, you know, have you noticed what you're talking about and where you've led us? And there's that awareness, that awakening that you can't deny something that you have led us to. So what I was finding was I was getting far more powerful results with coaching because people had to take accountability of where they'd led us. And that when you do that, when you're walking versus having a one-on-one coaching session, it's almost impossible not to get somebody to take accountability from that zone. So this was very relevant to it. And the more I explored it, the more I was finding I was getting these very, very powerful insights that, that were leading people to get breakthroughs. So I just kept exploring it, and exploring it. And the more I did it, I found that every single walk, even taking people coaching, walking around the city, it's interesting how when people are walking, talking and coaching, sometimes they don't pay attention to their environment and might miss a stop sign. They might jump on a red light and start walking, and how all of these little mini decisions are indicative of the state of mind that the person is in. And by just observing this process and illustrating to people, just pointing out to them, have you noticed where you've led us and what we're talking about? That question changed my world as a coach. Totally changed my world, because where I was having to do lots of questions to get people to own up to their own shortcomings and their responsibility and their part in leading their life to wherever it was. This was, well, there was no debate. No one can argue. Oh yeah, I know. No, I didn't lead us here. Yes, you did. I've been following you for the last 25 minutes and you could have gone 500 different places, different to this. You've led us here. And that was a major, major breakthrough. And quite honestly, that is the biggest part of this this process. The walking, talking, coaching. As a coach, you can do it with your friends. You can do it with your family. I wouldn't recommend that. But you can do it. You'll notice. You don't have to point it out to them, but start noticing whenever you go out walking, tune in. What are they talking about and where are they leading us? And how do these two, how do they intertwine? How do these two things relate to each other? And if you walk thinking about that question, you'll see the synergies. They start popping up all over the place. And 4 retreats later and lots of weekend workshops that I used to run and absolutely no money at the end of it led me to a change of career because it was a passion play for me. And I just enjoyed discovering something completely new. Interestingly enough, I started doing this about 10 years ago. And recently, I'm reading things in the paper that indicate to me that other people are catching up. They're catching up to this process of walking and coaching and really studying a lot deeper. I mean, at this stage, having done it intensively for about 3 years, I have a great passion for it. But I do different things now. I run a business network and I train people how to public speak and pitch for funding. So I've sort of left the reins on the walking meditation. But I mean, if there's anyone out there, especially coaches in that walking community, that wants to pick up the reins with this, then I would say absolutely go for it. I have never been so connected and inspired as well. Because there's a few things about walking that I discovered that you may not have realized. The first thing is, a lot of people, and I find this when I coach them, are either very logical or very emotional. Left brain, right brain. The left brain is more logical, and they're the people where you're having an emotional breakdown and they're saying, you need to take deep breaths. The people you probably want to punch in the nose or at least give a slap when you're in that emotional state, the person that's always logical. You know, and coaching them to places, getting them in touch with their feelings and emotions can be a challenge. And on the other side, people that are very emotional and maybe logic is not quite their strongest point because they flare up really quickly for seemingly no reason. That they're tuned in, they have a preference to be more logical or more emotional. What walking does, because it uses both sides of the body, it engages both sides of the brain. walking's a bilateral therapy. And since our left brain is responsible for the right side of the body, and the right brain is responsible for the left side of the body, that coaching and walking for somebody that is very logical or is very emotional or certainly slanted one way or the other, what this does is balance the polarities. So logical people will get more in touch with their emotions, and emotional people will get more in touch with their logic. And what it does is it balances the two. It's not going to say somebody really emotional, it's going to, make them completely zen. But what it is, it's going to move them towards it. They're going to get more logical if they're highly emotional. And the highly logical people will get more in touch with their logic. Maybe not to a completely centered point, but certainly on a sliding scale, it moves in your favor, taking people walking. Take the health benefits for walking. It reduces things like the prevalence of diabetes. It sets things going. And here's the critical element that I found. We learn through association. This is a really big point. We learn through association. So the body, the memory, the muscle memory, the stored memory of the body associates powerful learnings with states. So if you as a coach are talking to somebody and giving them a huge breakthrough while they're sat still, their body is associating zero activity with a great result. Whereas as a coach, if somebody's walking and you get them that big breakthrough, they then get to associate a big breakthrough with physical movement. So the two are then fused together. So rather than somebody say, oh, sat down with their arms folded and just think, oh, yeah, that's great, Adam. Yeah, thanks very much for that. They're physically active as they're walking. We learn through association. The two fuse together beautifully because you're associating action and accountability with the coaching process. And quite honestly, now that I've done this for 3 years, if ever anybody wants coaching from me, I tend to take them walking now because I know how much of an advantage that gives me. Unfortunately, it's December in London at the moment, so I don't take people walking quite as often as I would do at this stage of the year, but I certainly do for other stages of the year, and when it's warm and when I can run retreats abroad. So, I mean, I don't know how this works, Dawn, but at this stage, because I've brought quite a lot up, I'd be very interested to see if anyone got any questions at this point. I'm more than happy to answer them.
Thank you, Adam. Yeah, so anybody who's got any questions, if you pop them in the chat box, please, and I'll make sure that Adam sees them. I've been making quite a lot of notes, and what I wanted to know, please, Adam, was how does this relate to corporate clients? So you said the state of the mind is often the state of where the person ends up walking. What about the state of their business?
It all relates, Dawn. I mean, if you take somebody walking and talk about their business, their walk will always reflect it. Always.
So if they're a muddled, disorganized person, then that will be reflected in the way that they walk.
What I was finding were people that were perpetually complaining about things would have a prevalence to find dead ends in the walks, especially locally. And quite honestly, I discovered my local area in St Albans pretty damn well. I found places I didn't even know existed. Dead ends, great little walks, secret escapes, because it's incredible where people will take you when you're taking them through this process. And the one client that struggled the most was the one that found the most dead ends. Is that a coincidence? I don't know. I'm sort of leaning that nothing happens as a coincidence when you take people walking and you let them lead the way. That there's always a link. Always. I've never ever, since I started this, failed to find some sort of relevant association between where the client is and what they're talking about.
I find it really interesting what you were saying about the bilateral opportunity here to become more balanced when you're walking. Because I mean, I told you I trained as a Nordic walking instructor, so we trained in physiology, anatomy, but this didn't come up. So there's obviously no Nordic walking coaching instructors out there apart from myself. And I tend to take people out on a one-to-one basis. I've not taken groups where somebody's asking questions, somebody's talking, and somebody's observing. But I'm definitely, since talking to you, become much more aware of that. And I've got a question for you, so I'll put the other question on hold. Hi, Adam. It's Dave here. That's Dave Roberts. A lot of what you've mentioned resonates with my mentoring activities. So I'm just wondering if you would apply similar techniques with mentoring as to those that you've done with coaching. Thanks, Dave.
That's a really good question, Dave. And I would say absolutely yes. Why not? I mean, the ultimate thing with this is that is you're associating, you're getting your clients, you're getting your coaching buddies, your friends, whoever it is on this process, you're getting them to associate physical action with insight. Now, if you associate physical action with insight and you're sat on a couch with your arms folded, well, it's very easy to do nothing with it. If you're out walking and your journey is clearly indicating something bigger, it brings it to life. It really does, because you can't deny it. There's you that's led it there.
It kind of, sorry to interrupt, but it just reminds me of what people say about self-help books. Self-help books are great. They only work if you take action. So if you were reading a self-help book while walking, you would be able, probably, I think this is what you're saying, you would take on board the message a lot more than you would if you're just sat at home reading the book with a cup of tea and it goes in one ear and out the other, and then the book's on the shelf collecting dust.
Yes, and just to add to that, Dawn, that walking's good for you, releases endorphins, physically, mentally, spiritually, that walking makes you feel better. Mm-hmm. That when you are in a bad, stuck space, the first thing you have to do is get active. Mm-hmm. That's route 101. If you sit there dwelling in it, nothing changes. If you're doing at least a walk, you're doing something for your well-being, something for your mental health. Mm-hmm. Walking in nature is massively powerful. Mm-hmm. So if you do this in a natural environment, it times it well. Mm-hmm. I can only speculate from a personal point of view. It times it by at least 5 on the experience and the connection and the energy that I feel afterwards. Mm.
What I'd also add, Dave, and as Adam says, it's a great question, is that when I've taken clients out, because I'm a holistic health coach, so I take clients out walking, particularly when they want health and fitness type issues. So we're out walking and we don't even realize that actually they're being coached, because we're just walking and we're talking. So at the end of the walk, they don't have that same experience, or whether they've been mentored for the regular clients, the same as they would if they were sat in my office behind a desk, perhaps making some notes. Likewise, when I'm doing nutritional coaching, I take my clients into the kitchen. So we talk about what dishes do you want to prepare. So if you're vegetarian, you want to become vegan, or you're vegan, you want to become raw, or whatever. They're having that physiology of making their own or another recipe that they don't know. Then at the end of it, they don't feel like they've been coached or mentored in a health type coaching way. And so I can vouch it really does work. It's very powerful.
I think you've hit a really significant point there as well, Dawn. When people are out walking, quite often it doesn't feel like it's being coaching. It doesn't feel like, oh, I'm here to be coached, I'm here to get outcomes. It just feels like we're going for a walk and we're having a talk.
Yes.
And a good coach will make it feel like that every time, that people will go out and not even realize the process has started.
Yeah. I mean, I started this probably about 15 years ago. I was a volunteer trainer at a cancer support charity in France, and I had this one very buttoned up British stiff upper lip client, And I just knew in our first session that sitting on the couch with a box of tissues on the table in front of us was not going to work, was not going to help her move forward. And so I said, you know, how, because I find that open questions are absolutely crucial to having a balanced conversation. So how useful would it be if we went out, enjoyed some fresh air, took the dogs out and walk in the forest? And she said, oh yes, definitely. And we went. And what I found was that shoulder to shoulder walking, we lost the eye contact, but it actually worked for her. She was able to cry and release and let go and vent, because she had lost her husband through cancer. And so we walked once a week, usually once a week, but definitely once or twice a month for a year. And I think that was instrumental in her recovery in quite a fast time. In the second year, she was a completely different woman. And so that was something that I just stumbled upon intuitively, and I've kept it up since then. So a bit like you, you know, you found it curious with your walking buddies, but you've turned it into a massive research project. So what sort of white papers or research have you published that we can read about, Adam?
Well, quite honestly, Dawn, because I'm not a researcher. I was an ex-nurse with an interest in walking and coaching. That was it. So I didn't document it. I just ran workshops. I just ran workshop after workshop after workshop. And not only that, being a creative myself, I was finding that this process was getting deeper and deeper. I was vanishing down the walking coaching rabbit hole here, in that my insights were happening so quickly that I couldn't really agree with myself a foundation of where do we start. Here's the foundation program, because it was changing all of the time. What I was discovering, the awarenesses that I was having, even turning it from 2 people to 3 people, having an observer there added so much power to the process. Somebody there that's just not there to comment, just there to observe. And interestingly, the observer role for most people is the hardest role of all.
They say listening's
your
hard
mouth
work,
shut. Listening is a skill that everybody needs to develop. The research says that 81% of people would rather spend time with a good listener than a good speaker. So this isn't about being a great, speaker, being motivational or inspirational. No one cares. When someone's got a problem, they want to talk, and they want somebody to listen. And quite honestly, I found that it's nursing. What did nursing teach me? That some people are just lonely and don't have anybody to talk to. And it's not your job to quickly get to where you think that conversation is going. Sometimes you just have to let people talk. And in doing that, they will heal themselves. So, getting out of my own way, getting rid of my own ego, that I'm the coach, I'm going to help you. No, you're not, Adam. You're just another conduit to help people to help themselves.
I would add to that as coaches, a lot of us are perpetual students, we're peak performers, we're very driven. So, when you do a benchmark, if that's one of the tools that you use, where are you now? Where would you like to be? I've noticed that a lot of coaches say, oh, so you're a 1. What has to happen to get you to a 10? Without thinking that actually a client might just be happy moving from a 1 to a 2 or a 2 to a 5. Not everybody wants to be best in class or a marathon runner or whatever. You don't have to make that massive leap. So by saying to the client, what do you want to get out of it? Where do you want to go? And for a lot of them, it's baby steps.
Well, I completely concur there, Dawn. When I first went on this path, I went to a couple of big personal development seminars. And I remember going into one in particular. And, I just wanted answers. I was a little bit cynical. Who is this guy? Can he help me? I went in, I sat on the thing. And the first thing they had were a load of people on the stage dancing, trying to get everybody up, dancing on their chairs. And I sat there stubbornly with my arms folded, thinking, oh, for God's sake, I can't believe that I've just wasted my money on this. And I was really resistant to it. And it took a long time to win me over to that style. I sort of got in the end, oh, well, if you can't beat them, you might as well join. You've paid to be here. You might as well give it. You might as well play full out.
Yeah.
But that wasn't how I felt when I walked in. And I find that the UK audience is very different to an American audience.
Mm-hmm.
And pace and leading is really important. And there's nothing worse than if you're in a really bad space, you know, death in the family, you've just split up with somebody, you're feeling low, you've just had a medical emergency or whatever it is. The last thing that I want when that happens is somebody that is a 10 telling me, oh, I used to be like you and it's easy. No, just get out. Not today, thanks. Not today. I don't want to hear it.
Yeah. That's why
So,
I think
yeah, you've got to
pitch, pace,
meet
and
people.
tonality. Pitch, pace, and tonality is important as well. That's when the listening skills come in.
Yeah, you have to meet people where they are, and then you have to hold them by the hand, and you have to bring them out at their pace. Sometimes you can force the pace a little bit, but that's generally what I found. You know, there's no point coming at it from, wow, I've discovered something new. This is going to change your life. If you're not doing this, then you must be mad. And I find that sort of approach very prevalent in the world of personal development. I can do it. I used to be a waster like you are now, and you can be like me. Just do this program.
Yes. Yes, I was bankrupt. Now I'm earning 600 figures, and you can do it all of the weekend. Or I've lost 24 stone in a year. You can do it too. Yeah, yeah. I know the social media is full of that, isn't it? So what's the message in your book then, Adam? Because I know you're a published author. I don't know how many books you've written, but what's your book about?
Oh, thanks, Dawn. That's very nice of you. My book's called The Lunatic Gene. And I will be completely open, I self-published it. It's about lunacy. My parents were both psychiatric nurses, and I grew up in a bona fide lunatic asylum with staff accommodation. So we used to have psychiatric patients knocking on our door growing up. So lunacy is definitely a subject I know quite a lot about. And so I just wrote about it. I think we've all got a lunatic gene it's the self-destruct button. So we've all got it. It all manifests differently within all of us. And it's just really exploring what causes that and how to really dance with your lunatic gene rather than fighting it. Because most people
celebrate your uniqueness.
Yeah, celebrate your uniqueness. Celebrate the part of you that is completely lunatic. You know, it doesn't necessarily mean outgoing. If it involves going and hurting people or yourself, then that's not the sort of lunatic
we're talking
about. But we've all got a quirkiness in our nature that makes us do different things. And I find that there's two things that are at the central foundation pillars of everything that goes wrong in people's lives. Two things. One is guilt, and the other one is judgment. Every single problem in the world comes as a result of those two pillars. You know, it's not what happens, it's our perception of it, our judgment, and then through that judgment, creating guilt with people that aren't doing things the way that you think that they should be done.
Right.
So if we stop judging ourselves and lose the guilt on ourselves and just work on ourselves and stop judging everybody else, then the world gets instantly easier to navigate. But that's very simple, Dawn. And like most principles, the simplicity of the teaching underlies how difficult it is to actually bring that into your everyday life, because we're all trained and brought up in certain environments where we've developed certain habits that may not be overly productive, but do actually, they cause problems going forward. They need awareness, they need changing. So with my, it started off as a lunatic gene. I did self-publish, but then suddenly a publisher's found it. So I'm in the process of having to take it off Amazon now because a publisher's got hold of it and they're going to want to change a few things.
I remember you said, I mean, it's a fabulous opportunity. And I mean, there's lots of things that we could do all day long, whether it's taking vitamins, eat better, walk more, etc. There's lots of things you think you'd never find any time to work. But if you can combine a couple of things like I tend to take the dog with my green smoothie, walking and meditate. I'm sure you know Thich Nhat Hanh, that it won a Nobel Peace Prize and is a walking meditation activist. So I studied with him at Plum Village in France and read all his books and try and adopt walking meditation. So although I'm a stomper, I sort of catch myself pounding the Mother Earth and think, no, just be gentle, and be gentle with yourself. And what are you thinking about? What can you reflect? And sometimes just walk and just concentrate on breathing. But if we all walked more every day, I'm sure we'd be a lot happier and healthier, not just physically healthier, from a few pounds less, but we'd have better clarity of thinking, and that space and time to reflect, because that's one of the problems people say in the 21st century. There is no time. They're on a rabbit wheel. They can't think. They're not creative. They're blocked. They're stuck. And that's the essence of what you're saying, isn't it? When you take a client out, that you just happen to have noticed that their state of mind leads them to somewhere they're stuck or blocked or bogged down in a field or whatever. But how can we learn to put walking higher up in the priority list, do you think?
Well, it's like anything else, Dawn. I'm not going to sit here and tell people in the UK that they should get out and walk right now, because quite honestly...
Well, no. We've got people all over the world on the call, though, so...
It's not overly appealing.
Yeah, it's chilly.
If it's not raining or freezing or the elements are not crashing in at you, then it's a lot easier.
What about on a treadmill? Do you get the same effects?
You do. I mean, for me, it's not quite the same because the effects of nature are synergistic with this process. So, being surrounded by nature. I mean, I work with energy quite a lot, so I'm quite sensitive to energies, and I can feel straight away if I'm out in nature that I just feel better. That simple. If I hit a brick wall in my daily routine, the answer is always just get out and go for a walk. Just do it, Yeah, even if that's just around the block or to the nearest tree, may even give it a hug on a good day. It's like, but it's about connecting. It's about centering energy, and it's about activity.
Yeah,
it's very easy to feel sorry for yourself when you're sitting there inactive, doing nothing. If you're going to have negative thought process, at least get active with it, so that you can then think, well, where does it lead me? Why am I feeling this way? And what can I do about it? At least running a question that accesses a solution, which is, right, what do I need to learn in order to get a positive outcome out of this? How has this taught me? What do I need to change about the way that I'm interacting with life to make this feel better? Because there's no such thing as a negative emotion. Every emotion is there to guide us to a place that feels better. And feeling bad usually comes as a result of ignoring something that is completely obvious to you, or should be completely obvious to you or everybody else. And here's two big benchmarks. Yeah, absolutely. Two big benchmarks, Dawn, and this is with people. People used to come in when I worked as a nurse. I've got a heart attack. I didn't see it come in. There were no warning symptoms. I studied it. What's the psychology behind this? There's always warning symptoms, always. Two of the big ones, two of the biggest warning symptoms that something serious is going to happen is trapped mindsets. And the two big areas that happens, people get stuck in relationships. You might be with your other half and you might be telling yourself something along the lines of, we stay together for the kids. I can't afford to leave. We're going to do this. We'll see it when the kids go off to university. Then we'll deal with this. And people end up in their own prison. And not only that, I mean, how does that help your kids? Blaming them for staying in a dysfunctional relationship. The things that we tell ourselves. So this is very common. People that have cancer, strokes, heart attacks, relationship difficulties ongoing, because it creates stress and ongoing Things like sleeplessness, weight issues, all come of it because of this trapped feeling in your brain. So, that is something that always comes up for people. The relationships is the first one, and the other one is jobs. People get stuck in jobs. And a classic example, especially people in the city, people have got city jobs. Let's take banking, for example, where you get in there and you get, the longer you stay there, the bigger the incentive gets. You might get a mortgage subsidy. You might get other benefits that keep you tied to a job. Now, if that job gets miserable or you've got a bullying boss, people can't afford to leave it because of mortgage payments. They've got families. There's 101 things that people will tell themselves to keep themselves in toxic jobs. So jobs and relationships. If you want to know whether your friends or family are at risk, if as a coach you want to explore the other factors that are going on, always explore these two. Are you happy with your job? Are you happy in your relationship? And that's coming from a single guy, by the way.
And I would just
because I wasn't happy.
And I would just preface those two questions with the how. How happy are you? Rather, so that you don't just go and get a yes or no, you get a more balanced response.
To rate it.
It's very interesting what you're saying. I was reading a coaching book last night in bed, as you do. And it said there are 25 themes in coaching, but all of them come down to self-esteem. So what would you say is the impact on self-esteem when somebody goes out with a walking coach?
Well, everything that happens during the coaching process is then synergized and harmonized with the physical benefits of walking. So if you're a good coach, which we're going to assume that you all are, you've got the harmony, the synergy, the endorphins that are being released through the walking process. So it really does add a lot to what you're doing, and you're getting people active. It's the activity that's the first thing. Most personal development gurus will tell you, if you hit that brick wall, if you're waking up, you don't want to get out of bed, if you're feeling depressed, if you're just wondering what's the point of life, then the first thing that you could do, get active. Get active. Even if that involves just getting out of bed, getting dressed, and walking down to the shop to pick up the paper or a pint of milk or whatever it is. Just the activity of getting up and getting physical movement will definitely add to any other process that you layer on top of it.
I think you've just answered why that workshop you went to had you all standing on your chairs and dancing. It's that sort of old Tony Robbins type thing. Change your physiology. If you're clapping, if you're dancing, if you're, asked to stand tall on your chair, you can't be miserable by definition, can you? You can't be looking down, and the two things don't work. So what a great way actually to start, even though it's very rah-rah and not terribly British, it is a great way to get everybody on the same level playing field in order to be receptive to the message.
I agree with you, Dawn. It does work. The only danger with that format is that people go there and from an energy point of view, it's great to get your energy up. But from a sustainability point of view, it's a bit like a weekend-long drug fest.
Yeah.
If you piled cocaine into the rooms and just let everybody loose on it for 4 days, when they leave, there's going to be a come down period.
Yeah, and nobody to support them.
Personal development, except there's a very expensive package then tagged onto it in case you want more, which of course you do want more because you're already flat in the tube home minutes after leaving this great energy personal development workshop. So I am a little bit cynical of that approach as well. It's designed to lift you up, give you what you want, and then it just flattens you. And the only way to continue that process is to pay large amounts of money for more of the same.
Yeah, because by now you're at home, you're deflated, and it's all the low self-esteem. I'm not good enough. I couldn't possibly do what they've just done. I can't cope on my own.
How do I get more of it? When's the next workshop? Then you check dates, then you start buying tickets. And is that really the answer? Does that really help? massive amount of people in the long term. No, it just gets people feeling so bad about themselves that they'll shell out money just to get in a group of people that are going to make them feel good for a couple of days. And welcome to the personal development industry and the events world.
Well, I don't know how many walkers we've got on the call, but we did say that Adam and I have hit it off, and we've had a couple of conversations. We've got another one in January. We're actually going to talk about creating the potential of an international walking. You know, there's lots of places like the Santiago Compostela or the Walk to Rome, sort of the old pilgrimage type walks where people can jump on and jump off at the stage that they want to do. So you never know, you might be hearing about an organized coach while you walk and walk while you're being coached type of talk held by Adam and I. And if it's big and there's a lot of interest, we're going to need more coaches. So, you know, let us know if this is the sort of thing that you would either like to participate in as a coach, as a walker. And just let's do a bit of a straw poll in January online on social media. How important do people think that coaching while walking is going to be to the health and well-being of their clients? And let's make this happen, because as I say, as a Nordic walking instructor, I firmly believe in it, and I'm starting my first group on Sunday the 5th of January. Got my first group of 5 who just want to get fit and lose a little bit of weight, and I've not even mentioned coaching in it. We're just going for it and just see what happens. But I truly believe walking is very, very powerful. As you say, it gets you in touch with nature. It makes you grateful. It's helping you breathe. And obviously that means you get more oxygen to the blood and you're more likely to sleep better, and so many benefits. But I'm sure Adam and I will be producing some blogs to keep you interested in future. But what would you like to add to that? Because I know you're a speaker as well and run your own workshops. So what, if anything, would you like to add before we wrap up, Adam?
Well, what I would say, first thing, Dawn, is I can't tell you how grateful I am to having the conversation with you, because this was a part of my journey that was almost buried. It's like, no, I just need to go on and do something a little bit more commercial. So I run a business network and I train people how to public speak, specifically pitching for funding. But I'm building a community of people, a network that's not your average business network. It's not all about the leads. It's about how we can help each other. So if you look up the Fun Business Network and you happen to be in London, then everybody's welcome to come along and join me for that. So let's grow this community. Let's build this and let's bring this alive. If this is something, and I've always felt there was something really big in this. I mean, this is a string to any coach's bow that will add to what you're doing exponentially. And I have all this knowledge doing nothing at the moment. So if that's something that you want to tap into, then I'm more than happy to backtrack and do a few workshops or retreats to teach the rest of the
I love that. Run a walk shop. Run a walk shop.
I'll put you through your paces.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily going to be in the UK, is it? Because I'm in Spain and we've got people all over the world. So anybody who wants to do a joint venture with you, I'm
Absolutely.
sure.
Retreat centres, coaches. Yeah, I'm open to possibilities on this, because this really is something that I love, as I know you do too, Dawn. So. Yeah. You know, they say that's the golden goose in business, to find something that you love, that it pays. And quite honestly, I think this is the future of coaching. I really do. I've thought this for over 10 years. I've enough evidence now to know that this works. And if you want to learn it, then let's stay in touch, get in touch, let us know that you're interested. And, you know, the next step could well be a retreat, and you could be the next walking, talking coach.
Yeah. What a brilliant vision for 2020. Thank you very much for your time, Adam. It's been a pleasure, as always, chatting with you. If we don't have any more questions, I think we'll wrap it up now, just a little ahead of schedule, so that's good. And even if you think about a question afterwards, or you feel a little bit shy, you don't want to ask a question, although no question is silly, because if you're thinking it, somebody else is, then just send it to me or Adam directly, and we'll get back to you. But again, thank you for all your support and joining us on our discussion about the importance of walking. And I'm sure we'll meet again in the new year. Thank you very much, Adam.
Absolute pleasure,
Thank you,
Dawn.
everybody.
Thanks very much for your time, and thanks everybody for tuning in and your time in listening to this.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.